Hello and welcome to the very last keynote panel here at Develop Conference. We are talking running a game studio, everything you need to know. That's a guarantee. You can take that to the bank. You're going to learn everything you need to know about running a game studio today. I'm Elle Osili-Wood. I'm going to be your panel host, and we have got an incredible lineup for you. 4 of the UK's most inspiring studio heads to tell you, as I said, everything you need to know. So I'm going to get them to pop in and introduce themselves, starting off with Maria. Oh, I think Maria might be muted, so I'm not sure.
Oh, yes.
Very 2020.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Maria Sayans. I'm from ustwo Games, and we make Monument Valley and Assemble with Care. And we have a game coming up called Alba, a wildlife adventure. And I've been in the industry for about nearly 20 years, mainly in the AAA world, and joined ustwo Games a little bit over a year ago.
Fantastic. Really excited to have you with us. Imre, tell us what we need to know about you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Imre. I started in board games and tabletop role-playing games in the before times, many decades ago. It feels like a million years. I was head of RuneScape for a while, and for the last few years, I worked alongside a bunch of cool people at Bossa Studios to create comedy games.
Brilliant.
And just one last thing is that I'm also one of the founders of a project adapting George Orwell's Animal Farm into a video game.
Oh yes, that looks very exciting. I'm glad you snuck that in there. Veronique, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Vero. I'm working for Hi-Rez Studio. Actually, I'm in charge of our latest created studio, which is based in Brighton, named Red Beer Games. Also in charge of global publishing for Hi-Rez. So I also do all the marketing and sales things on top of running this amazing studio. I've been in this industry since 1999, so it's been a while. And I work for a lot of very cool company on the way, basically Rockstar Game, Take-Two Interactive, Warner Bros, NCSoft. So I met a lot of amazing people. It was a great experience, but I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here. For Red Beer Games, it's really cool. We have a tiny studio in Brighton, and I really love that.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us. And finally, AJ, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm AJ Scrutton. So I'm the CEO of Dlala Studios, which was a studio that I formed from my parents' garage 8 years ago with one of my friends. And there's now 23 of us in Essex, and we just released Battletoads. I've been in the industry for about 13 years. I actually used to work for Imre, wherever Imre is positioned from me. I think I was about employee number 9 at Bossa. And before that, I was also at Jagex. But yeah, majority of my career has now been spent kind of running this studio in Essex.
Fantastic. Well, as I said, what an incredible lineup. We've got really incredible talent with us today. I am so excited to chat to you all. So before we get started, just a reminder, you can submit questions. We are going to have a little Q&A at the end of this panel. So make sure you send any questions that you've got for them. I'll remind you all the way through. I don't want you to forget, but just a little heads up at the start. But let's dive right into it, because we've only got 45 minutes and there's so much to talk about. We've got so many fantastic people on this panel. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about how unique our industry is, because it is fundamentally, an entertainment medium. It is a creative industry, but of course it's one that is absolutely based within tech. So it's quite a unique balance. How do you find building a kind of company identity and structure around two sometimes competing, sometimes, well.
Oh.
Uh-oh. I'm still here.
Oopsie. Well, Maria, do you want to start?
That's good. That's good. All right. I can start and see. Oh, you're back. I'm going to take over. How do you want us to do this? Do you want us to go out one by one?
I think we lost.
Okay, all right. So while we're on it, I can kick it off, perhaps. I think that this is definitely something that is very unique and for the industry, and something that we think about quite a bit. And maybe so one of the things, some of the things that we think about us in ustwo games are, we want to make sure that every discipline is creative. So whether you are obviously in art, but design and production, and definitely in programming as well, that you think yourself as a creative contributor to the project. We also try to hire generalists as much as possible within a discipline, so that we can have them contribute at different stages and in different parts. And then I think the other thing for us is we try to stay small in our teams for as long as possible. So again, you can have that flexibility and that creativity, which often comes from, you don't really know the fun until you find it. Yeah, so I would say those are three things that we think about to try to address this question at ustwo games.
AJ, how do you find it? Would you say that's kind of a similar process for you?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it is. I think that the biggest thing for me that I've learned kind of doing this is like the company culture has to be slightly fluid and willing to evolve. We were very much the cliche, a bunch of, smelly guys when we started this company working out of garages, and, what kind of would have been acceptable in Dlala back then isn't acceptable now. And that's not to say we were doing inappropriate things. It's just more that, as the company's grown and we've gone from kind of this band, this tiny little band of people, to kind of like 23 really kind of unique personalities all working together. We had to be willing to realize, where some of our previous company policies wouldn't work, and where kind of the way we approach things doesn't work. And, our kind of number one rule is always transparency and honesty. We always say kind of like, there's no beating around the bush. We always kind of just say what we're thinking to get the job done the best we can. But it's kind of understanding that the way you talk to one person might not necessarily be the same way you talk to another, and understanding that the culture of the company has to reflect the people in it, as well as the people in it learning the culture of the company.
So you're somebody who's worked in lots of different companies. I'm sure you've kind of experienced lots of different cultures. How has that balance, how has that process kind of changed as you've moved between these kind of very big, very defined studios?
Yeah, it's very funny because, I have the same thought process in some extent. I think, we created this industry just to have an industry like us, creating great entertainment, to exhilarate, player community in the world. As a kid, I was playing game. I really wanted to be part of it. And then at school, I was kind of the weirdo, like the one who has no friends. So basically joining this industry, I felt like, oh, wow, this industry is awesome. It's like me. It's welcoming all those weird person, those introvert, smelly geek, as you said earlier. But, I think that we shaped it really like that, with different code of standard and different standard and different code of conduct, it's different from, more established industry, like, let's say car manufacturer, which have been around for a while, and they wear tie and, costume every day, and they have casual Fridays, where we should have like maybe dress up Fridays in our industry for a change. But I think, the culture is led by the people who join our team, and led by the people who are in our industry, diverse, welcoming people, and that's where the creativity comes as well. Is my assumption, based on how this has evolved over time, and what I realize is this has changed a lot as well. But initially, we were passionate, creative people, a bit introvert, and we keep that on the long way. But I think with the recent year, you have more micro teams that are successfully launching their game, and you have actually even less code of conduct or standard. You just have a bunch of guys who are just very happy to work together, get stuck in, and create fun, as Maria was saying, creating the fun. That's what we're doing, I think. So for me, culture is coming from the people who work with.
I love that, creating the fun. It's such a lovely way to, talk about our industry and what we do. Imre, for you, do you lean to one side? Do you kind of consider yourself more technological or creative, or is it a balance of both, and is that reflected, in your studio?
We always considered ourselves a creative studio, not always successful at being creative, but I think that's part of the deal, right? That you want to experiment with crazy ideas, and we always try to pursue that. We always try to do that, and I think the culture of games is unique, and talking to people running very different types of companies, it's different because games is an industry of passion. The vast majority of people relate differently to their work than in other industries. It's very rare that someone is as passionate about the outcome of their work, even if they're passionate about their work. It's not like I don't know how many people working in other industries, for example, an engineer picks up the Screw Monthly and says, "Oh my God, look, AJ, this new Screw is gonna come out next year. It's so cool." Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much that happens, and that defines a lot. That sets us up for a very different culture from the word go. And so I think it's easier to find a balance between the different fields and not just creative and technological fields, but business and marketing and everything else.
Fantastic. Well, I want to dive a little bit into kind of the process of, where you start, where your kind of idea generation happens, whether it's something, that you work on, whether it's genuinely that creative spark that just appears out of nowhere, and then how you kind of organize yourselves through the kind of development process. Feel free to not give away any big industry secrets. We're not asking for any, new IP, but give us a little flavor of how things work in your studio. AJ, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, sure. I would love to tell you kind of it's a consistent process that we do for every game, but it's definitely not. And I would argue kind of for us, I don't think we've ever approached any of our games the same as the last, for better or for worse, to be decided. But kind of like for us, really, the initial idea, the whole thing we say is it can come from anywhere. Like, it doesn't have to be a designer come up with the idea, or it doesn't have to be me. With one of the games we were working on pre-Battletoads, that came from our audio designer had like one line written in his notebook, and he wasn't even going to tell me it, and I just caught it as he was leaving the room, and like we turned that into a game. But kind of like our process is we do like quite a free, open pre-production. So like we'll figure out kind of the key questions that we want to answer, and then we focus the pre-production period on answering those. And we don't necessarily constrain that to like individual deadlines for each feature, but we kind of know like, by the end of X amount of months, we want to have some form of prototype or vertical slice. And then we kind of just collaboratively work through to get to there. And then, the goal we're aiming for with our current project is, at the end of kind of pre-production, we really want to know that what we are creating in production, and allow production to really be this kind of still iterative, but really kind of this driven kind of working through, kind of turning that into the full vision. But yeah, like honestly, like it's been different for us every time.
I mean, and that's the thing I love to hear, because obviously, as you said, you do have that really traditional story. You did start out, as this kind of small, scrappy games company. Vero, for you, again, you've worked in really, really big studios. You have this kind of really AAA experience. Is it perhaps a little less iterative? Is it perhaps a little less hands-on, or is that kind of a myth about AAA?
I think it really depends on what type of team you're working for. At the moment with my team, it's very iterative. We have an idea, code, we test, code, test, until we find the fun. But yeah, in different company where I work with before, for instance, like big IP owner, they will first look at, we want to do a game on this IP specifically, and then they will send that to the variety of studio they own and say, okay, next year it's this IP year, so let's do a game. And all the studio will start to look at some ideas, and then you will have the big marketing group will tell them, this is what the consumer wants, this is what has been popular over the last year or so, and this is what you should do. So all the studio will work like that. But in a smaller structure than the one I am at Redbeard, it's really iterative. It's really, we have an idea, we try, we play, we involve our, wider team, because overall at Hi-Rez Studio, we have 400 employees. So we involve everybody from time to time, but we also involve a lot of our players, even in prototype phase. So for instance, for some of our more established game at Hi-Rez, we have pro players playing, on the world championship of our game. So we invite them to test our prototype. So we get some genuine player feedback as well in during the early phase, and which is what we're doing at the moment with the game we're working on in Brighton. And it's actually helping us to develop and find the fun, really. But you're right. Depending on the type of company you work for, you may have different processes. But yeah, at the moment I'm working in a small studio, so it's very iterative.
Imre, for you, what's the process like there?
How are you just winging it? It's fine. AJ knows. Just making it up as we go. The thing is that it's really interesting to listen to everyone, because with friends across the industry and knowing how different someone Ubisoft 18,000 people, right? It's like their process is going very different from someone in a singular indie, and I think that for a while I had prejudices, but then I figured out that it doesn't really matter. It's okay to be an auteur, where it's like a singular vision holder. Let it be a AAA game or a tiny indie game, and it's like that's it, and it's your vision and it's your way or the highway. It's fine. It's fine to do that. It's also fine to be super mega iterative. It's all of them can create amazing experiences. You just have to be honest about it, right? You just have to make sure that you are honest to yourself and your team members and your fans and your players, that's the process we are using here. So if you have that honesty in place, you're fine. At Bossa, what we've been doing, we've done a lot of game jams. This has been going on for a very long time now. We do regular jams, and from those jams are coming out ideas, Surgeon, I Am Bread, everything what the new Fish, all of them are coming out of game jams. So the team sits down for a few days and come up with ideas, and we play them. We put them in players' hand, and we see which one resonates the best. We like to look for love. What matters is that I don't care if someone doesn't like a frustrating comedy game if all they play is hardcore shooters, because they're never going to like it, right? I want to find out who are the people who love it, and then talk to them and understand, are there enough of those people who love it? That's what matters. But we always change. And last year, for example, we did a campaign where we released 3 games live, 3 fairly well developed prototypes, and we decided with the community which one to develop, and I Am Fish went into development and will come out next year. So it's a very exciting process, and it's exciting to change for every new game, change the process, how you find that new game.
Maria, would you say that's the process for you as well? Does it shift as you change which title you're working on, or do you have quite a defined process at your studio?
No, it's changed. It's evolved a lot, and I think we try to have a defined process, but it's really about having a plan of how are we going to do this thing that we have in front of us. That doesn't mean that we're married to that process forever, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to change it. Because I think if I look back at the last few game ideas and projects that we have, they've come from quite different processes. And I think that, we're about 30 people, so not tiny, but not big, not one of these big companies either. And so I think for us, the key thing is, trying to have a prototype as early as possible and continue to iterate on that prototype. And keeping the team as small as possible for as long as possible, because that's what allows you to continue to iterate until you've found that idea. I think that having been in large studios before and echoing a lot of what Veronique and Imre were talking about, I think one common issue, the minute you get beyond a very small scale, is that very often when you green light a game, you're already like you put a forecast which comes with a deadline, which comes with an assumption of a team size. And the problem with that is that you don't really know how long it's going to take you to build it and how many people until you've completed a very thorough pre-production. And so this is a challenge that I've seen in every studio that I've worked with, is this sense of now I'm running against a milestone that was set, when in fact we didn't know as much as we know today. And having that balance with whether it's your board or your executives on protecting that the team doesn't really know how long it's going to take them to build it and how much it's going to cost until they completed pre-production and go into production. That's a common issue, I would say, that I've seen in every studio, and something that I don't have a solution for. Just be prepared to have that conversation over and over again.
Maria, I promised that people would leave knowing everything they needed to know, so I'm very upset to hear that you don't have a solution for that right now. So this leads quite nicely onto the next area that I wanted to touch on, which is kind of strategic decision making. So obviously in our industry, we have so many different areas, as I kind of touched on before. We've got lots of different audiences. It is quite a saturated industry. It is quite competitive, and it is fast paced despite the pace of actual kind of game development. So again, no secrets need to be given away here, but I am interested in the elements you consider when making strategic decisions. What are you looking for to kind of shape your company's strategy, your studio's strategy over the coming years? What do you consider? Imre, I'll start with you there.
There are two parts to this story, really, because one is the part of what you're good at and what you believe in and what you are excited about creatively, right? That is always going to be there. Again, it's an industry of passion. There are certain games which I admire for their what they achieved, but I would never want to work on them, right? And so it's important to start of knowing what you're passionate about and where you think your talents lie, right? You have to understand who you are, what you can actually produce. And when it comes to the second part, of course, the wisdom goes that you need to understand the market, and you need to understand the trends and all that. And it's absolutely right. You have to be very attuned. You have to understand your audience, and you have to know who your audience is and who you are talking to. But there is a bit of a fallacy here, because there is absolutely a market in following trends, but there is also an opportunity to set them. And I know it sounds like one of those BS entrepreneurial talks, those motivational talks, to follow your dreams and, believe the change you want to see, or whatever. But it is true. And I think one of the inspiring things about this industry is that still to this day, you are going to find both big and small companies be able to make a change and set a new trend. Every year we are seeing something, and then everyone else makes their own version of it. And it's really cool, by the way, because people take an idea which is a bit rough, and then they make a really good version of that idea. And that's also a very rewarding process to do. But the fact that it's still possible to surprise players, it's still possible to do that, to me, that says that it should be an inspiration to everyone to look at the market, but also ask, can I define the future? So it's not just about following the market or predicting the future, but defining the future. And I think it is still possible, and it still should be on the cards. I don't think anyone should walk away from that. And I don't know if it's answered to strategic planning that don't follow the trends, but define them. But there is truth to that, I believe.
No, I love that concept. Maria, how are your prediction skills? Are you looking into the future, or are you creating the future? Because I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo a lot of what Imre is saying. I mean, we start by looking at ourselves, at not just what we're good at, but what we think that we can be world-class at. What's our special sauce? What's the thing that we know how to do that other people, that very few people know how to do? We also look at our values, and we look at, like, who do we want to be in the world? Who do we want to be in the industry? What's the impact that we want to have? We look, and then this thing about setting trends or looking at the market, we think about it in two ways. One way is just we like to surprise. We like to do the unexpected. And that has to do more with the culture, the temperament of doing something that's like perhaps, surprising and also taking risks and innovating. But then there's another side of it, which is perhaps a little bit more calculated, which is think about the market, but not in terms of trends, in terms of what's an insight that you have, something that you believe about players, gamers, or where things are going that you think few people share. Because I think when you think about it from that perspective, then you're driven by, I think there's an opportunity there, but I'm innovating, I'm creating trends, I'm not following trends. So for us, for example, Imre was talking about humor, right? I think that's such a unique positioning. We think about meaning. We think about how do we bring what's meaningful about games to everyone. And I think that balance between going deep into games that can touch you, but also making them insanely accessible, I think that's where our special sauce we want it to be.
Fantastic. AJ, for you, have your kind of strategic decision-making, your strategic decision-making process changed as you kind of scaled up? Was it different when you were kind of...
Oh, we've lost you again, I'm afraid. I'll give her a minute. I can guess what the end of that question is, hopefully. Cool.
Just answer the question.
I'll just go for it.
Go for it.
So yeah, my assumption is has things changed now that we're bigger compared to when we were in the garages? So yeah, it 100% has in a lot of ways. Back then it was just two of us making the decision and we kind of did what we wanted. And nowadays, kind of, whilst I'm the majority shareholder and Craig, my founding partner, has kind of moved on, I've got kind of a strategy team internally. I think kind of our position is probably slightly different to, Imre and Maria's, in that kind of our two kind of drivers. The first is very similar. It's what do we want to make? But the second for us is really survival. We live project to project. We don't have investors, so really it becomes kind of what is the game we want to make? And for us right now, especially over the last few years, it's kind of like what IPs are we interested in taking and doing something new with? And what opportunities are there? And then it's kind of, can we convince a publisher to give us, millions of pounds to do that? Because for us, it's not about revenue. A lot of stuff we're doing is project-based funding, right? We go to people like Rare and we have a pitch for Battletoads and they give us X million pounds to make a Battletoads game. And that's kind of what we're doing now. And so it starts off with what can we get excited about, especially with licensed stuff. We're never looking to just do something where we come in, there's tons of rules, we get dictated what we can and can't do. It has to be like an IP that they're willing to let us, do a Dlala version of that IP. And especially if I'm directing it, it has to be an IP I'm happy to live in. If I'm going to be making this for 2 years and it's someone else's initial world, I have to live that world. I lived Battletoads. Luckily, I loved Battletoads and I got to kind of recreate a lot of it from scratch. But I lived in that world for 2 years. But then, like I said, after that point, it's okay, well, this is great. It's an idea we're excited about. Is someone actually going to pay us to make it? Because there's 22 other people in this company. And whilst if I'm not going to pay myself 1 month, I'll live with it and I'll figure a way around it. The thought that I've got all these people depending on me for mortgages and feeding their children, is terrifying. So I have to make sure that as much as I want to kind of go on my creative whims and be the airy-fairy director, it has to be something that someone else wants to make and wants to give us the money to do. So I don't necessarily look at trends in the market as much because we're not necessarily revenue based. It's really kind of more about this is an IP I love. This is how I prove I love it. This is how I prove we can do it. And then does a publisher exist that is going to have any interest in this? And sometimes that is affected by trends in the market because they'll want you to go, hey, the thing we all hate doing, this game is kind of like this game mixed with this game and this game, that no creative likes doing a razor. So I'll tell you, no one wants to sit there and say, it's similar to these other games. But there are publishers where you have to prove success in the market already. And that does come down to a trend-based thing. And then there are others that are purely looking for something new and original, and they want to take the gamble. thank God that Rare and Microsoft took the gamble on us, because I'm not sure I would have. And I think hopefully we all feel very happy with how it played out. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's that creativity versus will someone actually want to put money into this?
Vero, have you found that same balance? How much do you have to weigh what is essentially going to sell versus doing something innovative and exciting and new?
So I think it's interesting point that AJ was touching on with regard of funding. I don't have this issue. So because Hi-Rez has been around for more than 12 years now, and we have a lot of live games, live services, which have been there for a while and are successfully running. So yeah, we're more on the side of trying to find the fun and creating a game which is close to our DNA. So we're doing free-to-play, competitive, online game, and that's what, when we start to work on small prototype with groups like in my team in Brighton or in some of the team in the US, it's really finding a new game that could fit very well our skill set and knowledge. So quite similar to what Maria and was saying at the beginning. It's really about understanding what we can do, what we do very well, what we excel at, and try to bring some sort of innovation and our own little sauce, and to add a new game into our portfolio, which will be super fun for the player of the world to play. So, and I keep telling my team and and the people I'm working with at Hi-Rez, it's like, we are lucky. We are very lucky. I worked for many companies before, and I never had this position where there is not this massive Damocles sword above your head, thinking like, we really need to get this one right. We really need to make sure, we're going to find someone to sign the contract, or, or find someone to distribute us, because we're going to be, in trouble for all ourselves, and in this current situation is completely different. So I don't have a lot of experience of suffering from the funding. I have more experience of being like, you've been told this is what you have to do, or in the current situation, we've been starting an office and a studio in Brighton to have more, diverse talent to bring into our, a game development pipeline. I think we had mainly North American based studio before. And when we started the Brighton team, it was really to bring, a very diverse team together and try to create new game around what is close to our heart. So in our team in Brighton, we have 15 employees and 9 nationalities represented. So it's a mixture of all of us, of the people of the world. So just within us, we have an interesting, diverse, knowledge of what the gamer of the world would like to see. And we kind of all online, gamers. So that's how it works for us. But yeah, it's, as AJ say, there is this problem as well, knowing you make sure you have, your funding and, your contract signed. So that's the way for us.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sad to say we're in the final 15 minutes of the panel. So we're going to start looking at some of the questions we've had come in. Don't forget, if you want to submit questions, there's still time. You can still frantically send us a question now. So I'm going to start off by talking about 2020. We have, of course, had a few questions about what it's been like to work this year. So Vero, I'm going to come back to you for this one, because you kind of touched a little bit on your company setup there. I'm going to combine two. So we had Billy McMillan, who asked what's been your kind of biggest lockdown lesson. And we also had Juan Ues, hopefully I said that right, sorry if I didn't, who wanted to know what were kind of the pros and cons of working from home during lockdown for your studios, and will you be considering making a work from home change in the future?
Definitely. So working from home, it's definitely something I'm contemplating, but I guess, there have been a lot of, company has made some announcements, I think more recently, Microsoft, saying that for certain type of group of people, depending on the job they're doing, they will be permanently considered able to work from home, and some of us and some of the other won't because of the job they're doing. Overall, it was easy for us. I mean, easy physically to move and get set up at home. I think all of us had computer, and the one who didn't have computer could take their computer from the office. I mean, it was just a bit of a chaos for the first week, getting everyone to take their chairs and desk and everything. But it was fairly smooth. We started the lockdown a bit earlier than what our government here in the UK advised for, because, you know, we felt like, it's going to come our way. Let's just get prepared. So we were like quite set up. So it was not too challenging, I think, in my opinion, to do the work. What has been challenging, mainly for us, is, I mean, some of us are people living by themselves, and not having the colleagues interaction, the friend physical interaction every day has created a lot of distress within some of us, you know, who don't have, you know, family and whatever. So I think on the mental health side, it's been hard for some of us. We did set up a lot of, you know, I mean, we did actually implement straight away a Discord server to have like on, you know, voice chat all the time open with every member of the team. But I think, you know, there is still, you know, a loneliness happening. So we have like a lot of mental health support included into our, you know, healthcare package. And we did like try to encourage people to contact, you know, some of the company we're using to help us to talk and try to help, and we each other try to look after each other basically. But it's, you know, I think that's the biggest challenge is keep the motivation high, the morale high when you're living by yourself, you know. I guess it's hard for everybody, I think, you know. So I think that was for me the hardest bit to overcome, because apart being on Discord all day and say, hey, I'm here, do you want to chat? There was not so much I could do. While when I'm in the office, when I see a member of staff a bit down, I'm just like, hey, let's have a chat, let's have a drink, or, you know, let's discuss, you know, do you want to do stuff after work, or, you know, trying to engage with people. But that's been, I think, the most challenging bit. But on the work side, I think the type of game we're making, it was easy enough for us. We didn't have, you know, a big IP game owned by someone else that we had to QA or whatever. We don't have those problems. We let our consumer or players in, you know, the game very early and say, hey, do you think it's good? What is broken? Tell us. And that's how it works for us. So yeah.
AJ, for you, what's been kind of your biggest lockdown lesson, and how was your work from home setup?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, obviously, the obvious thing to say is we're all super lucky that we've been able to just continue on doing our jobs, right? There's a lot of people, and a lot of people I know that are not so lucky and are kind of struggling to find work now. So I definitely don't want to make anything I sound like a sob story. But I mean, I've always hated work from home. You know, this is the third time in Dlala history we've done it since, you know, we founded when we left Microsoft in 2014. We did it again. I just miss the team, and I know the team all misses each other. And it's weird for us because since we all last saw each other, we've finished a game, launched a game, and started another game in the period of time since we last saw each other. So it's, you know, it's just hard. You know, I've always hated it. I've never liked it at all for us. And it's never been a case of not trusting the team, which is always the common misconception. In fact, we had the opposite problem, that the team were doing too many hours really when we first went from home. Like, I think it was because there wasn't much else going on. They were throwing themselves into work, and, you know, it become one of those things that actually moving forward, if this continues, the thing we have to look at is making sure that people aren't overworking because they haven't got other options to do at home. But yeah, like I said, look, we're super lucky we're able to continue our jobs. And for me, it's really just about the fact that we just don't get to see each other. And especially, you know, at the start of a project like we're in now, like normally we would just be in rooms together, throwing stuff up on whiteboards and, you know, getting to enjoy ourselves. You know, and we're very lucky that we have a job where we actually get to enjoy ourselves. But, you know, it's, yeah, for me, it's just that lack of the team and us all being around each other.
Imre, how have you found it? Has it been kind of have you also missed that hustle and bustle of having people around, that collaborative environment?
Oh no, I don't like people. So it's heaven.
I can vouch for that.
It's brilliant. And if I have enough of meetings, I just say my internet broke, and I'm done for this. Perfect. It's really interesting how differently it affects people. Like I am a little haven. I'm extremely blessed. And I think Age is absolutely right that we should be very grateful and we should aim to give back and be aware that how many other industries hit much harder than this. You know, a friend of mine is a photographer. She hasn't made any money in a year, right? So it's these are extremely difficult times, and we have to be very, very grateful for where we are. But what's interesting is that how differently it affects people. I think it was already mentioned, the functional things. I wanna concentrate on the mental health side. Even for me, who I'm very happy to be just sit in my room with a book and just I disappear for 3 days, right? Even for me, I feel the lack of social interactions. And I think that it's very important that you pay attention at the mental health of the people around you. And I'm not just talking colleagues, but everyone else, online, offline, everywhere. You know, mental health professionals are warning about a tide wave coming, especially around the holiday season. So just be kind as much as you can. And I know that we all have limited energy and we have to look out for ourselves as well. As they say on the plane, put on your own mask first before you help someone else. So take care of yourself and try to take care of others, because I think we all put up a brave face. But it is, at the end of the day, we are in the middle of a pandemic, right? So I think we have to recognize that this is really tough. And we are fortunate to be where we are, and let's hope we can use that platform to help others.
Absolutely. I mean, well said. Maria, for you, what's been kind of your biggest lockdown lesson, your biggest lockdown learnings?
A lot of it has been said, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's really about empathy and about just being there for each other. There's been a lot of, it's been challenging, even though like we are so lucky. And I think we've found that we can do remotely a lot more than we thought we could. Like we had this idea that our culture was all just very physical, or like just being close to each other and playing games at lunchtime. And we miss that absolutely, but we've been able to do a lot successfully and well remotely. And so for us now, it's about trying to find that balance going forward. Because what we're also seeing is that we miss each other emotionally, but we also miss each other for things like the more creative work and for the more unexpected inspiration, sort of surprising. And I think that relationships can become a little bit transactional, and it's something that we need to be careful of. That part of like emotional connection with a company, with your team, with what you're doing, to make sure you don't lose that, because this medium is just becomes a little bit transactional. So we're overcompensating with so many other things, whether it's the Discords, the many events that we do, a lot of social stuff that we're doing. But really looking forward to going back, perhaps in a more balanced way, where because people's lifestyle, when we've done a recent employee kind of temperature check, people I am satisfied with my lifestyle, with my life balance, work-life balance has improved so much for us. So our team is happier with their work-life balance right now than when we were all in the office, right? And so we have to recognize that there's something about the way that we're working right now that works for people, and finding that new balance when we go back, it's going to be something that we talk about quite a lot right now that we're trying to prepare for.
I have to say, I feel like I've just had a big realization when you talking about kind of things being more transactional now. That's exactly what this year has felt like. We've lost the kind of the social fluff around everything, and it does feel a lot more transactional. That is what kind of I think can sometimes make it feel a little more tiring, is you're working the same, often more hours, but with less of the kind of I'm gonna stick with the phrase social fluff around it that stops it from feeling just so kind of give and take. So yeah, thanks for that. I feel like I learned something there. Don't care about anybody else watching, just me. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all the time that we have, and I'm devastated because we had so many great questions come in. But what I'm going to do is get everybody to really quickly, just in like a sentence or two, and I know this is hard, so I apologize, just give your kind of best piece of advice. And that can be for somebody starting out who's kind of aspiring to do what you do, somebody who's already set up a studio and is perhaps going through that rough bit in the first few years. Just kind of what's your one bit of advice for somebody either in your position or who wants to be? Maria, I'm going to come straight back to you for that one.
I would say try to work with people that you like and trust, because making games is hard, and it's hard emotionally because we put our passion and our identity into it. So the more that you surround yourself with people that you genuinely like and trust and share values with, the easier it's going to be to navigate the inevitable ups and downs.
Fantastic, thank you. Imre, how about you?
Find love, adapt, and overcome. Like, look for the passion in your team and your players, and be ready because shit is coming your way, you know, ups and downs, as was said, and you just have to change and roll with the punches. And sometimes it's really tough, but again, it's a passion of industry. So look for love, adapt, overcome.
Oh, lovely. Vero?
Yeah, I think everybody said it all. It's like passion, you know, ideas, creativities, and for me, it's trust. It's trust with people. So if there is no trust in the team, your team will become dysfunctional and you won't be successful to create something really fun. So I think it's important that you work and you address if there is problem within your group. But it has to be a very, you know, grouped, very tight, stick together. We are in it together. Let's get it done, and yes, bring the passion and the love to the player of the world.
Another great message. AJ, no pressure. Just see us out. You know, most inspirational yet, please.
I'll go the other way. I'll go slightly the other direction. So yeah, the biggest bit of advice I can give is that all advice and all experience is completely relative, including what we've said today. Like, what worked for Dlala over the last 8 years might not work for someone else, you know, and so everything you get, just don't ever take it as the gospel. Like, you know, acknowledge it, think about it, but don't, you know, recommendations, people to avoid, how things work, all of that stuff. You know, I think all of us could sit in a room, show each other every project we've worked on, every contract we've signed, and they would not be even similar in a lot of the time. So like, you know, everything you're going through, take what you can from other people, but just know that your experience is unique to you and you have to make the decisions that are right for your team and for your studio.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been, I mean, just for me, I've genuinely been so fascinated listening to you all. It's been so interesting. I hope that everybody watching at home got as much from that as apparently I did. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Obviously, loads of great advice there. Please do go and check them all out individually. I can promise you they are all fountains of knowledge, so go and find them. And of course, we've got loads more coming up for you today with Develop. So stay exactly where you are. It's the last day, make the most of it. But for now, I've been Elle Osili-Wood. I've been chatting to AJ, Imre, Vero, and Maria. They've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.